So the topic basically I'm going to present is basically the water rights policy and governance in Eastern Himalayas. Just want to acknowledge my co-authors of this paper work. What we are basically Samuel Thomas here representing the session, Ms. Sarah Kaling and Siddharth Krishnan and Vigdesh Swami. They both are basically in Bangalore office, and we, myself, Samuel and Sarla, we are in Gangtok office in regional office. So it's important, and it's really, we need some type of rules and regulations also. It's not that we don't need the regulation, but how to implement it and how regional authorities use it. So basically, as I said, like I'm not much into the policies. Basically, I just picked up the national water policy, which is recently being drafted, and they are also still looking for the comments on it. And so basically, the national water policy objective is to basically to make aware of the existing situations and propose framework for the creation of system laws and institutions, and to make a plan for the unified national perspective. That's a bigger goal of the national water policy. What we discussed, and my colleagues from the Bangalore office, what we discussed is basically there are certain issues from the ecological side, from the hydrological side, which this draft has problems, water policy problems, and then there are other issues also with the social side. The social side I'm not going to cover, but some of the governance, like the ecological side and hydrological side, I'll just cover that part of it. What are the issues we have right now and what policy is. And I'm basically like open that after the presentation we can more discuss about it, and maybe like senior persons are here basically which we can really more discuss what are the problems, and then which can through IMI we can also like basically send us a note to the other people too. So coming to the governance issues in the water policy right now is like the current policy, the current national water policy is not covering the hydrological fluxes what we talked about in our hydrological community. It's like they're not really taking care of the system, how the water moves from the downstream to the basically upstream to the downstream, and how the management of those systems is going to affect the water flows and all. They don't talk. They basically talk about. They don't talk about basically Dr. Singh started with that payment for ecosystem services. Our policy doesn't really cover the part of like PES part, like if our upstream people are doing good sustainable ecological management, they're not really getting any incentive to do that. And so we have to make some type of system into other water policies that they can get achieved, or like they can be basically motivated to do that sustainable management. So there are some governance issues like which are in the right now the policy. There are some ecological flows in issues in the right now the current water policies, like with the people know about like we are like lots of hydro plants are coming in the northeast region, and they say okay like they're going to maintain the minimum flow, but this is the maintaining a minimum flow in the rivers. It's a pretty obsolete idea, but our policy, national policy, doesn't really cover like they're not covering the ecological and environmental flows, which is basically the needed part for the stream ecology, for the fishes, and how much we need at different season, how much minimum flow we need. That doesn't really talk about that. And there is a very sad, like basically things that people say is like any flow, river flow that reaches to the coast is basically a waste. And I think someone mentioned yesterday also about the waste, like, but it's not that. Basically, like when we talk about it's not towards the mountain side, but like for the coastal people, when the water coming to the like a sea and all the ocean, basically it's carrying basically a lot of nutrients, and which is like helpful for the nutrient, like for the fish communities and all. So it's not a waste. So basically, we have to change our attitude and think about like putting some note for water policies also. Like we have to change that concept of waste. And they are like so basically we need related to the hydro plants basically our need to have policies really need to cover the existing projects like which are hydro dams and all, like to really review it to work from the environmental point of view. like how they are going to impact the environmental stream ecology, environmental flows and all. So we need to basically like maintain that, and tell our policymakers that this has to be incorporated into the water policy. The concept of river linking, the policy talk about the water surplus and water deficient area. So basically, but it's based on that, like what people think, okay, now this is the surplus area and then we have surplus water deficit area. But it's not that, like we have, the policy should still cover the sustainable management of regimes like a different hydroclimate region which has higher, okay, we have higher flows in northeast region, okay, like, but still like to take the water out, but still like you have to maintain the environmental flows and basically sustain those ecosystems also. So these are the other issues, and then couple of issues. These are issues basically came up from the workshop from Kalimpong and from Kohima. It's like the water energy issue. Basically, our integrated energy policy states that India cannot deliver sustained 8% growth over the next 25 years without energy and water. But with this type of issues, like what we are now getting into the when people talk about clean development management, CDMs. With that, if the government is going to push, or the international government, international things are going to push, okay, hydropower and all, clean energy. So local governments are all going to push for the hydro dams. But what's the effect of that onto the environmental flows and basically on the water of the rivers and all? So we have to think about like how we have to incorporate those things into our policies and all. There are issues of transboundary water energy policies. How like these are coming up in like between China, India, and Nepal and Bangladesh also. So those are the things like which we really need to focus and people talk about like through the workshop also, like what they are really worried about. And there are some water conflicts coming up. Its major is like the water conflict between urban and industrial water demands and urban and peri-urban areas. So basically, like what it is lot of the water allocation goes into the urban area, which people think like, and then lots of water basically like not coming to the local rural communities also. So it's a problem with like people are really facing on ground, and it's a similar way like what we have in the Darjeeling also. We have similar issues in different rural communities that water is being found from the downstream side and then basically putting up for the urban cities. So the similar there is a conflict between our upstream downstream communities in the Kohima region, and also like these bringing the dams in the systems, also like making the communities like there are fractions in between the communities of the region of Arunachal Pradesh. So those are the issues like which really are coming up very a lot in the water conflict area. So we have to like basically like enhance our thinking and basically like send a signal to the policymakers and national policies, basically how to incorporate those points into the policies. The other issues basically came up for the from the workshops and the consultations. Basically, there's problem with the water and food security. Like lots of emphasis is given, like there's not a lot of emphasis is given on the degradation of watershed, and which is basically impacting the agricultural fields, and which is like eventually like it's causing the food security problem. There are problem with the single source, stress on the single source. Basically, the government is not really focusing on regenerating the basically the sources they have to regenerate and basically maintain those sources, but they are just thinking of like we can push the water from the downstream, or basically buy the water from like basically link the river from the different side and then bring water from other side. So they're not really working on that, like to really work with the local water sources what they have. The other issues like people have covered is like the wetlands and livelihood. Basically, are regular wetlands and all. They have not given a lot of emphasis on it, and then lots of wetlands are drying up, and through that lots of livelihood also like being lost. So we need to really think about also those, like how to incorporate those and goes into the policies and all. Basically, those are the issues which basically came from our studies and basically also from the consultation. But Recently, as a group from ATREE, basically we are about to start a new project in Darjeeling area, and one of the sites in Arkavati is in Karnataka. What this project is going to be like, we are going to work on the to understand the impact of climate change on the water quantity and quality of the water in Darjeeling region. And many of the people and many of the presenters basically mentioned that we need research data, we need research studies in Northeast and Eastern Himalaya region. But I was just want to say that I was pretty lucky with, like, when I joined last 8 months back to ATREE basically. So after that, like that time we had a project going on with ATREE, funded by the Department of Biotechnology. Now we have started we almost instrumented like 7 streams in the Sikkim region at different altitudes and different forest covers. So I'm really hoping towards that. I'm going to basically develop a huge database system. That's my hope, is to basically that can be used to do the hydrological modeling and hydrological studies for long term. There is also like a need for the effect of land cover and land use with effects on the hydrological fluxes in different spatial and temporal scales, which I hope that this study which we are right now doing in Sikkim will be a good startup. And there are studies which really need to be get going, is the climate change effect on the hydrological processes. And to basically to find out, it's not just like climate change is going to accelerate the hydrological process, like which ecosystem is more vulnerable compared to the other vulnerable ecosystem. So that's the other research need we have to focus on. The way ahead, and the last slide of my presentation is basically I just want to make sure, like, to give a start, like basically a thought, and then maybe basically a concluding remark from my presentation is like, we need to involve the communities and start a community-based organization in the planning and policy management of development process. And that's my basically, I think, like where our policies and our government really needs to focus on, also like just to focus, try to incorporate the communities into the planning management and planning commission. And this is all what I have basically, and that's what. Thank you.